So today we are going to talk about our blood sugar and how it is our willpower. I feel very strongly, I can speak from experience, that my blood sugar is absolutely my willpower. I can have all the great ideas that I want and how I'm going to have my day. And if my blood sugar is too high, then it will dictate what I do. And I'm sure some of you guys can appreciate what I'm saying. In fact, comment in here if you feel that your blood sugar dictates how you eat. Like if it helps you in your decision making, if it helps you be impulsive in the moment to maybe go for something. I mean, I can tell you for myself, there could be donuts on the counter. They literally could be donuts on the counter. My family is not that mean to me, but I mean, there could be. And I could stand right there and look at them and be like, you almost repulse me. Like I have no desire whatsoever. That's when my blood sugar is nice and low. If my blood sugar, I want to say blood pressure, it's not my blood pressure, it's my blood sugar. And if my blood sugar is too high, it would be very difficult for me to say no. It would be. I would have to have a lot of resolve. I would have to talk to myself. I'd have to put them away, get them out of sight, out of mind. I'd have to do all kinds of things. I know that about myself. It absolutely, you know what? Exactly. Lisa said her blood sugar rules her world, and thankfully keto keeps under wraps. Exactly. I say that all the time. Keto is my medicine. Keto is what keeps me on the straight and narrow. When I'm eating in the way that works so good for me, and I'm generally tracking because that works better for me. It's so easy. It's honestly so easy. Then when I'm not, then it's hard. And why would I want to make things harder if I didn't have to? Anyways, okay. I want to say first, welcome if there's anybody new. My name is Lita, and I am not a doctor. I would like you to know that, but I'm someone who's super passionate about keto. I'm also very passionate about improving our health. And I myself have lost 55 pounds and I have reversed all of my health conditions naturally. So I just love to pass on the information. I tell you where I get the information a lot of the times, and then you guys can do your own research and you can do what works for you. Okay, let's talk about our topic today about blood sugar. So talking about what we were just saying about how you notice that sometimes it's really easy to say no. You're in the lunchroom at work and someone has pizza or donuts or whatever, and you feel totally fine to bypass it. And then there's other times when you're like, I just can't say no. And we can justify it however we want. And hey, no judgment. You know me, Friday Night Confessions. I have no issue with someone deciding to just go off their keto plan. But if you're being real with yourself as to why you say yes and why you say no, it probably will help you make better decisions in the future. Like I said, keto is definitely my medicine. And when my blood sugar is low and steady, I can bypass things like that. Like it's so easy. But when it's higher, it's very, very difficult. So if you actually know this about yourself, and we'll talk about the different ways that you can know this about yourself. But let's talk about the pancreas, okay? So when we eat regular food, just any old food, okay? The pancreas releases insulin to lower the blood sugar. That's its job, to get the blood sugar into normal range. Insulin is the fat storage hormone. There is no fat loss in the presence of insulin. Dr. Berg taught me that. When I heard that, I was like, okay, wait a minute. So anytime I'm eating anything and my blood sugar goes up and my pancreas releases insulin to lower the blood sugar, during this process, there's no fat loss? Even if I'm eating healthy? Yes, that is true. But when you're eating keto, your rise is going to be like this. and then it's going to come back down. It's going to be a little boop, boop. But when you eat things like carbs, and especially processed grains, I have to point that out, that grains are worse. Grains and sugar, put them together. They're like the two worst things ever. And so you go from here to here, and depending on the kind of person you are, so if you're diabetic, if you're metabolically, challenged, if you're insulin resistant, okay, it's not going to go like this and then go like this. It's going to go like this, and it's going to go like this. And it's going to take a long time to get back to where you were. So if you started here and you're over here, this whole time, there was no fat loss. Okay, so think of it in terms like that. We're doing this because we want to lose fat and be healthy, but we want as much time as possible for our body to utilize our fat stores as energy. So the more we're doing this, and the more we're up here and taking a long time to go down, the more time we're not losing fat, the more time our body isn't using our own fat. I thought that was so interesting. Like when I heard Dr. Berg say that, I thought, whoa, that makes so much sense, because of course, he talks all the time about how, when we're intermittent fasting, for example, and the more times that we eat. So the more times that we eat, the more times we do this. The more times we do intermittent fasting, the more times we're like this, right? It makes so much sense. Anyways, I'm digressing. I'm going all over the place. I have a hard time sticking to my notes because I'm kind of like squirrel. I just like to talk about whatever is in my head, and then I have to zone in and go back to my notes. So if you see me looking over here, it's because I'm trying to make sure I don't forget anything to tell you guys. So when we're talking about what we're eating, okay, some things to think about when it comes to sneaky carbs. Okay, so like this week, for example, we're doing our 7-day macro tracking challenge. And why do we do this once a month? Because it really puts us in check. I fully admit that I love not tracking. If I could live my entire life without tracking and be successful in my weight loss and keeping my blood sugar down, I would do it. But it's very difficult. You have to be very, very strict in what you eat. You pretty much have to say, I'm not going to eat any carbs, because they sneak in big time. So if you're not tracking, that is a really easy way for your blood sugar to kind of creep up. It happens really, really easily. We just eyeball things. We think something doesn't have very much. We don't look at the package, and we think, I can't tell you, for the longest time, I was getting these almond crackers from Costco. I was telling you guys how much I liked them or whatever, and I was not paying attention too much to the carbs. Hey, it was almond flour. It wasn't wheat. It was pretty good, but it was pretty high in total carbs. And I noticed a big change when I started having that in my regular diet. I noticed a big difference with my blood sugar. So things like that, they sneak in. Are you eating more than 20 grams of carbs a day? Unless you're tracking, you probably don't know, unless you eat the same thing every day and, you figured that out. Are you eating your carbs alone? This is another thing. If you're eating, now when I say carbs, I'm not talking about your leafy greens. Okay. Even Dr. Berg says, the leafy greens are kind of almost like a freebie, because it takes so much energy to actually digest them than what the carbs are actually worth. And they're so low anyways in net carbs, and there's so much good fiber and nutrients and stuff. So not talking about those, but let's say everything else. If you are eating your other carbs completely alone, without any fat, without any protein, that's when you can get a really big spike too. But when you eat it with the other things, it helps balance it out and it helps bring it down faster. So that's a really interesting thing. So you definitely don't want to do that. I remember even years ago, before I was even on keto, I remember my naturopathic doctors giving me this advice. And this is back when I was eating grains and stuff. And he would say, if you're going to have a piece of cake, if you're going to have your ice cream or whatever, always have it as your dessert right after dinner. Don't even have your dinner and wait 2 hours and say later on you're going to have your dessert. Literally have it right after you eat. I'm not giving you tips on how to go off your keto, but I'm just saying that is really good advice all the time. Like whether you're veering off or whether you're actually on your keto, like not having your carbs completely alone. Okay, so other ways that our insulin can be raised, our blood sugar, hormones. And we talked about this, Debbie and I talked about this. I did an interview with Debbie a couple of weeks ago, and you can look in our group here in guide number 7. I have it in there if you want to listen to our interview. Very interesting. When you are in the perimenopause and menopause stage of your life, your hormones are kind of fluctuating. And even if you're eating exactly the same as you always have, that is going to change your blood sugar. It is going to increase insulin. It's a real sad fact. I don't like that myself, but it is a fact. So even more reason to be really tracking and seeing what you're doing. Maybe what used to work, like if you're in that stage, maybe what used to work maybe is not going to work anymore. Maybe you could be a little more generous and say, hey, I have 30 grams and I've been fine. I'm 40 grams a day and I've been fine. That may not work for you when you're in perimenopause and menopause. Estrogen dominance. Okay, so when you've got way too much estrogen, this is before perimenopause generally, you have way too much estrogen, not enough progesterone, that also can raise your insulin. Basically fluctuating hormones, right? We're trying to keep our hormones balanced. Another way that our blood sugar can go up is stress. And this is something that I think all of us can appreciate over this last year that we have been through. A lot of people, I cannot tell you how many people have said this. They've said, I don't get it. I'm doing my keto pretty much the way that I always have, and I have gained 10 pounds. I have gained 20 pounds or whatever. I myself have gained weight in this last year. For the first time since I started keto, I gained some weight. And I was like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I can't say that I was totally being 100%. I fully admit that I go off sometimes. But I think it was adding in all the stress of this last year. It has been a very stressful year, where I am with my hormones, that kind of stuff. But stress really, really makes a difference. If your cortisol is going up and your adrenal glands are being taxed, that raises insulin. So trying our best to be as stress-free as possible. Like we've talked about this in other talks. Deep breathing, meditation, some yoga, taking time out for yourself, that kind of stuff. I mean, it does make a difference. Okay, so let's talk about the things that we can do, and then please keep on making your comments and I will go back and read them. But let's talk about the things that we can do to help ourselves, because there are lots of things that we can do. Okay, being real with our carbs. I admit it. I like to turn a blind eye sometimes and just pretend that something doesn't have carbs when I know darn well it does. And when I don't track it, inevitably, that's when I kind of go off the rails. So knowing that you're 20 grams or less of net carbs a day and actually tracking it. I'm saying if you're noticing your blood sugar going up, it can sneak in. If you are diabetic or insulin resistant, this affects us more. I am insulin resistant. I have had a weight problem since I was probably 8 years old, right? That's insulin resistance is being overweight for a very, very long period of time. Your body is having to deal with these carbohydrates and higher blood sugar for a very long period of time, and you become insulin resistant. It takes a very long time to not be. In fact, I'm not even completely convinced that I ever will be not insulin resistant. I think I can just medicate it well with the way that I eat, but I think I'm always just kind of on the edge. So if you're diabetic or insulin resistant, it's even more important that you really keep track of your carbs. And you might even want to go lower. In fact, I know some people that they feel so much better if they go by total carbs. And I'm not saying to start off doing that. I mean, obviously go by net carbs because it's easier. But if you're really struggling, then I would definitely go by total carbs. At least try it for a while and see how that works for you. Dr. Berg, I mentioned this before, he suggests not counting leafy greens. So don't worry about that. When I'm talking about the carbs, I'm talking about everything else, but not the leafy greens. That actually makes our life so much easier. And it also encourages us to get a lot of leafy greens into our diet, which has so many vitamins and minerals. It's so good for us. It's nutrient dense. I mean, we absolutely need that. Okay, balancing your hormones. Getting our hormones balanced, okay? If you need any help with that, Debbie Brown in our group, I've interviewed her many times. I will put a link in the comments down below so that you can get a hold of her if you want. She is absolutely amazing. She's given us so much food for thought, and balancing our hormones makes such a difference with our blood sugar and also just feeling really good. Okay, here's another big one, and I am totally guilty of this: exercise or lack thereof. Exercising lowers blood sugar. Huge, huge. And little tip, especially after you eat. This is something that I've incorporated just more recently. I'm not a huge exercise person. I fully admit it. I wish I did. I wish I loved it. There's people in this group that walk tons, and that's fantastic. And it helps all the time, any kind of exercise that you can do. But if you can get some kind of exercise in after you eat, that is fantastic. Like, I don't know where I was reading it. I can't remember who it was on YouTube that was talking about it, that said, if you make it kind of like your habit, that after you eat, you just go for a 15-minute walk, just a 15-minute walk. You don't have to put this pressure on yourself that you have to have like a big workout or whatever, because sometimes that's kind of hard after you eat, but just a 15-minute walk. So that's what I've done. After I eat, that's when we take the dog for a walk, and it gives me time to stretch my legs after eating, and I'm, lowering my blood sugar. So that's good. Also, apple cider vinegar after we eat. So actually, before I go for the walk, I have my apple cider vinegar. This is the one that I like. You guys, use whatever kind that you like. This one has the mother. You want to make sure you have that, because that's the important part. And I will give a link for this in the comments later, but that's what I use. And I just put a tablespoon in a glass of water. I drink it down, then I go for my walk. That's what I'm doing, because I have noticed that my blood sugar has creeped up. When I was kind of getting really real with myself as to, okay, like, why have I gained some weight and why am I not feeling myself or whatever, I started testing my blood sugar. So sorry, I'm going to actually go back to that little part because I kind of skipped it, but ways to check. You can go by how you feel for sure, but honestly, there is no better way to check than with your blood. So those of you who are diabetic, you fully know what this is or something similar to this. It's a blood glucose meter. Mine happens to be also, we'll test your ketones as well. It's a dual meter. This is the brand that I have in Canada. It's a Precision Duo Neo, something like that. And that's where I got it from Shoppers Drug Mart, which is a drugstore in my town. In Canada, we are a little bit limited of what we can get. But if you're in the States, Keto Mojo has a fantastic one. It's a really good price. And you poke yourself and you get your blood, and then there's two different little sticks that you use inside the machine. One is for which one is this one? This one is for your blood glucose, and this is for your ketones. I only test my ketone. That's another subject, but I only test my ketones once in a while when I'm doing experiments and things like that. I don't do it all the time because, one thing, those strips are ridiculously expensive. The ketone ones, they're like, in Canada, they're over $1 each. So I was getting them through the States when I was able to get through the border, and they are a little bit cheaper there, but they are very, very expensive. So I will just point that out. But the blood glucose ones are actually really inexpensive, whether you get them in Canada or you're in the States. So using this little baby really tells you a lot. You can use it to test certain foods. You can use it to, like, when I first wake up in the morning, that's what I do because I want to see where I'm at. And that's when I first started noticing. I was like, okay, I used to wake up and it was, this number for the longest time. Started feeling a little sluggish, kind of tired. I thought I better check my blood sugar. It's been a while, and it went up. It went up like 2 points, something like that. And I'm not diabetic or anything like that, but I do think it is really important that we do keep our blood sugar as low as possible. I was pre-diabetic and I was heading for diabetes, and I don't want to go there again. So that's why this is so important to me. This is why I'm sharing this with you guys. Okay, back to my notes here. Okay, the other way to really lower our blood sugar, one of the absolute best ways, honestly, besides not eating so frequently, is intermittent fasting. And we talk about that a lot in the group, and in guide number 6, there's tons of information in there. But of course, the guru of all things fasting, Dr. Fung, this is the best book, absolute best book. This is the fasting Bible. But of course, there's lots of information on YouTube. I'll put the link to this in the comments. But of course, you can go, and Dr. Berg has tons of information on YouTube, and so does Dr. Fung. And those are my two gurus. And then, there's other ones too, but those are the two that I really like to get my factual information from. And intermittent fasting, nothing lowers blood sugar faster and better than intermittent fasting. So, whether you incorporate that, in your day all the time, or sometimes what I do is when I'm, I've been off, and then what I'll do is, like, say I had a weekend and I was, not super good. And then what I'll do is I'll make sure that on Sunday night, I have a really good balanced keto dinner, and I have lots of fat and very, very low carbs. And then the next day I will really hit the fasting hard, and I will go as long as I can possibly go until I feel like I have to eat, because I just want to dump that glucose as fast as possible. Now, I'm able to do that because I have been doing keto for a really long time. I do not suggest anybody new do this, but for anyone who has been doing keto for any period of time, like, you've been doing it for at least, let's say, 4 months or so, you have it within yourself to do it. I mean, you have to see how you feel when you're doing it. Obviously, I don't recommend doing it if you don't feel well, but I know myself, and I know that I can do that pretty good. So I go as long as I can. So yeah, so that's a strategy that you guys can use. What else? Yeah, so that's about it. Those are about my tips on how to lower it. But my main message to you guys is, if you're frustrated, if you're saying, like, I don't know why things don't seem to be changing, or maybe I've gained a little bit, or, and of course we don't want to go just by the scale, but you're going by your clothes, and you're going by your inches, and you're going by other things, and you're just feeling like you're kind of stuck. Blood sugar is a really important thing to check. If you haven't ever checked it before, I highly recommend that you do so. If you buy just a blood glucose meter without the ketone option on it, they're really cheap. And in fact, if in Canada anyways, if you go to your drugstore and you go to your pharmacist and you tell them that you're wanting to get this, mine anyways said to me, "Oh, are you diabetic?" I said, yes. "Oh, okay, here you go." And I got it for free. I'm just telling you, I'm not, I'm just saying that's what happened to me. I don't know that would happen with everybody, but that's what happened when I went to my pharmacy, and that's how I got mine for free. So anyways, take that with a grain of salt. You can always just ask and see. Or maybe if you just go to your doctor and you say, that you're concerned about your blood sugar, or maybe it is showing a little bit, maybe your A1C was a little bit high, I'm pretty sure you can get it covered. So anyways, just wanted to point that out. So I'm going to go back in case anybody had any questions or anything you wanted to say about this. I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels like this. Linda said today she had one cookie, and only one cookie, but she recorded it. That's awesome. Linda, I'd be curious to see if you find it easy. Okay, so say you're doing really well on your keto, you've been doing well for a while, you decided to have your one cookie, that's okay, and then you went right back to your keto. Do you find that that's easier because you've been, really balanced, versus if you kind of went off a little bit too long and your blood sugar went too high, would you have a hard time stopping at one? Because I find that really, really hard. That's why I came up with, and we say this in the group all the time, one and done. I literally came up with the one and done idea for myself years ago, because I noticed with myself, if I allowed myself to go off just for that one treat, that one meal, just that one session, and I said, that's it, I get right back on. I have no choice, but I must get right back on after. I could do it pretty easily. But if I allowed myself to go past that, my blood sugar would go up too high, and I couldn't control myself. I absolutely could not control myself. And you ask my family what happens to me if I've been on a vacation before, because they have seen this in action, and I allowed myself to go off too long and my blood sugar went too high, they literally would look at me and go, "Oh my gosh, Mom, who are you?" we don't even recognize you. I mean, I couldn't stop myself. I would be at the buffet and I would be eating crap that I would never, ever eat for health reasons and for keto reasons. I would never eat those things, but I couldn't stop myself. My blood sugar dictated what I decided in that moment. And that's why I've decided that going forward on my vacations, I'm probably going to be doing fatty coffees during the day and pretty much OMAD all day, and only allowing myself to have a dinner, because that's the only way that I can keep my blood sugar. When I'm on vacation, if I go and have or go down and have a big breakfast or whatever, that is it. Game over for me for the whole day. And even if I'm trying to be good and having more eggs and bacon and that kind of stuff, just having that frequent of insulin rise during the day is enough to railroad me. But I'm insulin resistant. So you have to know yourself. If you're the kind of person that has ever said, I notice that whenever I have breakfast, I notice that I have a hard time for the rest of the day. I kind of can't stop eating. That's your clue right there, that you're insulin resistant. I had that for most of my life, but I didn't realize that, because they tell you breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Like, what have we been told our whole lives? So I wasn't listening to my body, and I was having that breakfast. Of course, back then it was probably like high carbs and whatnot, so that made it doubly worse. But I wasn't listening to my body. I know now that does not work for me. It just doesn't work for me. But you have to know yourself. You have to know what works for you. Christina says, I go for a walk myself after dinner every night. I don't have a dog. I feel so much better after walking. I don't feel so stuffed. Yeah, exactly. It helps you to kind of feel like you're wearing off your dinner a little bit. And I also feel like it gives me more resolve after I've walked after dinner, because truthfully, sometimes I feel like, I could have like a little snack after dinner. I didn't really use up all my macros today, et cetera, et cetera. I can justify anything. I go for a walk, I come back, and I just feel like, I'll make a cup of tea, just a cup of plain tea. That's good enough for me. That's all I need. Lisa, does having MCT powder, peptides, bone broth in coconut milk in the morning negate a fast, or is it allowed? Also BHB. Okay. If we're talking about true fasting, then you do not want to have the collagen peptides, my awesome Intentionally Bare collagen peptides with biotin, plug. But you don't want to have that with your breakfast. If you are truly trying to fast, and our definition of a fast is no insulin rise. Okay. So if you are trying to have zero insulin rise, I will say that it's just a little blip. It really wouldn't make you, it would blip for just a tiny little bit and it would go back down. But in the true sense of insulin rising, you would not want to have that. You would not want to have your bone broth. I got to go back here. And coconut milk, I don't have it in front of me, but I would think that the coconut milk would be okay. The MCT powder, absolutely 100% great. In fact, it is a help. It really is a help because it helps with your appetite. It helps with your energy, your cognitive function. There is no negative to that. And all the experts now are finally coming around to saying, absolutely, you can have that during your fasting time. So don't worry about the MCT powder. I would skip the peptides, the collagen. I would skip the bone broth, the coconut milk. You'd have to look and see what the protein is on it. I know that like heavy whipping cream, so it really depends on how much you're going to have, because let's just say that coconut milk was in the same thing as, say, like heavy whipping cream. Okay. And there's only like a tiny little bit of protein. Yeah, that's if you're having like 1 tablespoon, but I don't know about you, but I'm kind of like a blah, blah, blah. I'm a gluggy person. If you're only trying to put in a little bit of color, then I'm sure you're fine. And I'm sure you're fine with heavy whipping cream, but most people tend to put in a little more. I only use MCTs. That's all I do. I use my MCT powder and my MCT oil, and that's how I make my fatty coffee. That's just how I enjoy it. You do you. BHB, totally fine. Absolutely fine. And again, I've got a video from Dr. Berg, and I've got a video from Thomas DeLauer, both in guide number 6, and both of them saying totally fine with the MCTs and totally fine with the BHB. So you can go into guide number 6 if you want to watch those videos. So those two are good. But if I was you, Lisa, if you're really trying to fast and you're trying to keep your insulin as low as possible, skip the other stuff until later. So what I do is, generally speaking, OMAD is my favorite way of eating. So that means one meal a day. And so I will have my bone broth powder with my collagen and my almond milk and stevia, whatever. And I will have that as my dessert. So I have my dinner and then I have that drink. And then I have my apple cider vinegar. Then I go for my walk. That's kind of my routine that I do. So I would definitely skip that. Lisa says, yes, in Canada, glucometers are free. Strips cost unless you have a drug plan. Okay, great. I was just buying it. And that's funny that you should say that, because I was just buying my strips and I never even thought, I am on a drug plan and I never even thought of even submitting that. That's so funny. I just presumed that we were not going to get that covered. So that's very interesting. Linda went off a few weeks ago, but today I had the one and done. It varies. The best for me, honestly, is to stick to keto 90% of the time. Right. Linda, one and done. And it depends on my mindset. Been in both corners of the ring. Oh, I get that. I so get that, Linda. Both corners of the ring. That's a really good way of saying it. Yeah, I feel the exact same way. I'm totally on my game. And I have also been the lowest of the low, like horrible. And when that happens, I just sometimes don't even recognize myself. It's disappointing in the one sense, but it just reminds me I am always this far away from going back to kind of like my old ways. And I'm not saying this out of perfectionism. I'm not saying this like you have to be perfect. What I'm saying is you have to be real with yourself and knowing how your blood sugar affects you and what liberties can you take and still be in control of yourself. That's what I'm really trying to just be really super honest with myself. Don't let myself get to that point of no return. I hate that. I hate that. It makes me feel so upset with myself. It's the worst feeling in the world, feeling like you don't really have control over yourself. And it's the blood sugar. It's honest to goodness, it's the blood sugar. Lisa said, the protein per cup of coconut milk is 0.5 grams. Yeah, okay, so that's nothing. And for the amount of coconut milk that you're probably having your coffee, I mean, it's only going to be a little bit. I doubt are you having a half a cup? I doubt it. But anyways, I don't think that that's going to be a really big deal. But if you really want to know, and Lisa, it sounds like you have a blood glucose meter, you can check yourself, right? So when you wake up in the morning, you can take your blood glucose, and then you can go ahead and have your coffee the way that you want it with your coconut milk in it. I would say though that if you are testing this for coconut milk, don't put in your MCTs. Literally, it's black coffee, no stevia, nothing else, your coconut milk in the amount that you would normally have. That's it. You would drink that. Then you would wait 30 minutes. You would test yourself at 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes if you want. It's kind of good if you can do all three, if you can handle the finger poking, and see if you got a rise. See if you got an insulin rise. Or you might even get like a tiny little blip up, but then if it goes right back down, that's okay too, if you're okay with that. But you can't put in your MCT powder, because your MCT powder is going to help the situation. It's going to help lower. So you don't want to have that when you're testing just the coconut milk. My feeling is your coconut milk is probably fine. I don't think it would be a problem, but testing is always the best. Deborah says she has grass-fed butter in her coffee. Absolutely fine. Butter is no problem at all. Deborah, I use the urine strips and I'm always negative. You can get urine strips for blood glucose? Is that what you're talking about, Deborah? Could you explain to me what you're talking about? Do you mean the urine strips for, if there is for blood glucose? I didn't know that. If there is, like I said, I'm not diabetic, so I don't know all the different ways. Or do you mean the urine strips for testing for ketones? Because then that we can talk about for sure. Let me know about that. Yeah, so that's something. So this topic is something that I have been just really analyzing for myself, and all the different things that I told you guys, what we're eating, whether we're tracking our hormones, our stress, exercise. Okay. All of those things I was not on my game for. I can honestly say, well, okay, so hormones, I'm on my game for hormones, but like I'm going through a transitional period. So that is happening naturally. But I wasn't acknowledging the fact that sometimes things are happening that you don't have control over. And so because of that, I have to be more mindful. The things that I was giving myself a free pass on, I have to be a little bit more mindful of those things. 20 grams was always what I was shooting for of carbs, but quite often I would go up 25, maybe it was even 30, because there's a lot of times where I wasn't tracking. And so I wasn't being honest with myself with those carbs. And add that into the fact that my hormones are changing and I went through a lot of stress. Yeah. So it makes sense. What I'm saying is, if you really think about it, you usually know the reasons why you're stuck or why you've gained or why you don't have as much energy. If you think about it, you usually know why. It's just whether or not we want to acknowledge that. Ketones. Okay, that's what I was going to say. I thought you were talking about ketones. So you know what, Deborah? The urine strips are the least effective out of all the different ways. Getting a ketone meter, I suggest getting a dual one because then you can do your blood glucose too, is the absolute most accurate way to test. There is a breathalyzer one. I don't personally think it's super great. I don't hear super good reviews on it. If you're blowing it the wrong way or whatever, it doesn't seem to work. So I highly, highly, highly recommend that you get this. The urine strips, there are those of us in the group that have been doing keto for a long time, never registered. I have never registered ketones one single time on those strips. Yet, I will test myself on this and boom, I'm right in range. So I know that I was in ketosis, but the strips didn't show it. Also, you can get a false positive. It can show that you're in ketosis and you're like, woohoo, and you might be really dehydrated because that can show as being in ketosis, but really you're just dehydrated. I don't like the strips. Myself, I don't like them. If you're going to use them, I would say that they're best in, say, the first 4 to 6 weeks. Even at that, they may not work. But in the first 4 to 6 weeks, they might work for you. And then after that, your body gets really efficient on how it uses ketones, and it usually doesn't even show on those strips. So it's probably not you, Deborah. It's probably not you. If it's important to you to know if you're in ketosis, then get this. And I will put a link. In the comments for Keto Mojo. It's an excellent one. I hear nothing but rave reviews, even though mine is a different one. As soon as the borders open, I'm actually going to order a Keto Mojo so that I can honestly say that I've tested myself, but I know lots of people that use it. I have never heard one bad thing about it. So I think it's really accurate and people really like it. And it's very reasonably priced, actually, in my opinion. Yeah, so guys, that was it. That was my message for you guys today. Think about it. Think about the different ways that you can lower your blood sugar. Think about it is important. It really is important for our health. I mean, obviously, we're here because we want to lose weight. You know, I'm still in the process, and losing weight is great. But keeping our blood sugar low, there's so many health benefits for doing that, right? So we don't want to be pre-diabetic. We don't want to be diabetic. We don't want to, it actually affects our brains. That's a whole other topic, and we'll talk about that another time, going through all the health benefits of keeping our blood sugar low. So anyways, I just wanted to pass that on because this is kind of stuff that I'm going through right now, and hopefully you guys can benefit from it as well. So I will talk to you guys in the group. Okay, take care. Bye. Hey guys, before you go, hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already, and hit the bell notification so you can be notified every time we have a new video posted. Also, down in the description, I will have links to everything that we talked about in our chat today, including information on how you can join my Intentionally Bare Keto support group. See you next time.